I was hoping to see a particular lady come and join us today. So the lady's problem was she wanted to stencil the Peony Rose directly onto her card base. What she was finding was that when she'd stenciled it onto her card, the top flower was too near the top of the card. So what I thought I'd do is just run through with you how I do it, okay? Now, obviously, with your Ultimate, it's going to be easy to just stencil directly onto your card, because you put your stencil onto your pegs and position your card where you want your flower to be. Now, because this lady wants to put the flower directly onto the card, and because you're using the Ultimate and you're using the peg system, you're not going to be able to put the flower directly in the middle of the card by using the Ultimate. So if you want your flower directly in the middle of the card, you're going to have to not use the Ultimate, and you're going to have to position your stencil on the middle of the card and make sure that you've got the right amount of space, white space, all the way around the stencil. And remember, you're using this line on the stencil, not this line, okay? So that way you know that this flower here isn't going to come any higher than this, because obviously all your stencils are the same size, okay? But what you are going to have to do is make marks on your card. So this is an 8x8, this is a 7x7. So if you want to do your Peony Rose on an 8x8 and you want it in the middle of your card, you're going to have to mark where your stencil sits and then either tape it down or hold it down, okay? Now, yes, you can do it, and Natasha's shown you projects where she's not used the Ultimate, so we all know it's possible. But all I would say is, if you have issues with your hands, which I do, I do get a bit of arthritis in my thumb joints, it makes it hard, and there is always a risk of you not lining it up properly because you haven't got something that's going to keep it in the same place unless you tape it down. But you can position it in the middle of the card. If it was me personally, because you can't, when you're using the Ultimate, because you can't position this stencil directly in the centre of your card, I would make the decision to put the flower to one side, okay? So I'm using my card base. If I open it out, actually, I'm using my card base, and my card's going to be top opening, which is why it looks a bit odd, and I'm going to be putting the flower to one side of the card, okay? And I know that nothing is going to come outside of this stencil because they're all exactly the same size. So when you've stenciled your flower, it's going to sit to one side of your card. If you want it the other side, obviously you're going to have to not use your Ultimate, or stencil it onto a piece of card and then make a feature of it and put it onto a panel, and then mat and layer your panel onto another piece of card so that you can then position it on your card wherever you want it, okay? But nothing is going to come outside of these lines because they're all the same size. So you can position it on a card where your flower isn't going to be too near the top of the card, okay? I hope I made that clear. I know it can be a bit daunting if you've sort of planned something and it just doesn't work. Sometimes it's hard to get your head round what to do to get it to work how you want it to work. So I just thought I'd go through that before we start. I'm going to be using the Peony Rose today, and I'm using the stencils, and I'm also using the embossing folder and the die, okay? So I'm cutting that out. I'm stenciling it and then I'm cutting it out. And then I'm using the circle ornamental that was so popular recently, and I'm also using the multi-layer beautiful anemone stamp and die set, but I'm not using the flowers. I'm actually only using one of the sentiments, and I'm using the Have a Lovely Day sentiment, okay? So that's what I'm using today. Those are my products, and this is where we're headed. So first things first, we need to put our wreath into our card, okay? Now, when you're lining it up, you decide how much of the wreath you want to fall off the card. So you're deciding where you're positioning this wreath, okay? So how far across the card. You could just have a little bit hanging off the edge. Personally, I think if you're going to have some of it hanging off, make it a decent amount, because then it looks as though you've done it on purpose. Whereas if you just sort of do that much, people might think, oh, she slipped with that, so she's tried to make the best of a bad job. Which is fine, don't think that if they want, but you could have planned it like that. But personally, I think it's worth making a statement of it and positioning it so that you've got quite a bit hanging off the edge of the card. Okay, so what I would do then is making sure I've got the same amount of space top and bottom, more or less, not measuring. Tape it down on my card and then place it on my plates like so. So I've opened my card out and I've placed my die, which has moved, and you'll see I've lined it up by using 2 hearts, so I know it's even. Okay, so the hearts are in the same position, top and bottom of the card, and then my die is on the plate completely. Put my plate back over the top and then run it through my die cutting machine. Okay, I'm not doing it off air because A, it makes a noise, and B, it takes too long. So there's my card with my wreath cut out. Alright, now you'll see here that I've done 3 lines on the card. So I've put 3 score lines down here. Now the easiest way to do that is with your scoreboard, and I'm using my large scoreboard because it means I can butt my card up against the edge here, and I know my lines are going to be straight. Alright, so I'm not using the tool that comes with the scoreboard, because that's going to give me lines that are a little bit too thick. I'm using my ball tool and I'm scoring my lines on here. Now because I'm using the scoreboard, I know the lines are going to be even. Alright, and they are so effective. Now I just want to say that you all joined our group and you use the design team cards and other people's cards for your inspiration, which is fantastic. That's what they're there for. But we do the same, because I've done this because I've seen it on a member's card in the group, and I thought, well, that's really effective, I like that, so I'm going to use that. So you see, it works both ways. We might give you some inspiration, but we can also take inspiration from your cards too. So that's the basis of my card done. All right, now then, I'm going to put a piece of white card or a piece of white paper just behind here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink on here, only lightly, and just to give it a little bit of interest, like I've done on here. I don't know whether you can see, but there is pink ink on that wreath. All right, so I'm using my bijou brushes because I like the soft brush feel that they give. All right, so I am quite lightly, I'm hardly touching the card, because this colour, this is Wilted Violet, one of my absolute favourite colours, and I know Connie will like this as well. And I'm quite lightly just rubbing over that wreath with my ink. Okay, just to highlight the wreath lightly. I don't want too much, but I just wanted it to stand out, just wanted it to be more noticeable. So by putting a little bit of ink on it, I just think it lifts it on the card. Alright, yeah, like that. Now, as I said, I'm using the Peony Rose, but I'm not doing the stenciling on air today, because you've seen me do the stenciling and the die cutting and the embossing several times, so I've already done all that. Okay, I will list the colours that I've used. I did have them written down on a piece of paper, which I've moved, but I will list them in the description box for you. I know the greens are Twisted Citron and Evergreen Bough. I keep forgetting Evergreen Bough. It's a really beautiful green, and I just think it really lifts the card. But I've also added around the edge here a little bit of tea dye, just to give the edges of the leaves a little bit of a tinge of a different colour, because obviously, you know, leaves aren't totally green, are they? If I just lift that up a bit, I don't know whether you'll be able to see the little bit of tea dye colour on there. See, just around the edges here and here, just around the edges of the leaves. Okay, so I know I've used Wilted Violet and Seedless Preserves, Shaded Lilac, and I think I'll just use those three if I'm honest. I'll have to find my piece of paper and I will put it in the description. Now obviously you can see through this, and I don't want you to be able to see through it. I want it to have a backing. So I've cut a piece of purple card. This is my textured cardstock isn't here yet, so this is American Craft cardstock, but it would have been Lisa's cardstock. But I think adding that colour behind the wreath just really lifts the wreath. And of course the other thing it does is hides the score lines that you've done on the front, so nobody can see that. And I'm putting it wrong side to the back of the card because the linen side I want to be on view, just to make it look prettier really. Okay, so if I just put my glue on here, and then we can just add that, get that out of the way. This glue is amazing. I love it. You don't need very much. I mean, there isn't very much on here, and I'm only putting it around the edge because I don't really need it anywhere else. So if I add that into place there, like so, and then you see what I mean when I say that you won't see these. When I cut this out, if I lift it up, you can see that right on the edge is where the little hearts were. So parts of the die have sort of cut the edge of the card. But once you add that backing card to it, they disappear. You don't really see them. So don't worry about lining your die up so that you've got no sort of wobbly edges. It won't matter. It really won't matter. You won't see it. You won't notice it. Okay. So then I'm going to add my sentiment, because my sentiment is going to sit. I don't want to stamp the sentiment after I put the flower on, because I want it to sit right. So I'm going to stamp it in black, and then I'm going to shadow stamp it in Monarch, which is a lovely purple colour. There are two purples in the VersaFine Clair, but the other one, which I think is called Fantasia, it's just a little bit too dark, and I didn't think it stood out enough. So I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the middle there. I mean, this is really quite a quick card. So if you've got cards that you need to make, you know, quite a few of, or you want to sort of have a run, then you can do. Okay, so I'm just going to shadow stamp this. So I'm hovering over where I've stamped the black, and I'm moving very, very slightly to the left and down a bit. And one day I will get this so that it looks absolutely spot on, because so far I haven't. But it's only practice, and because you can see through these stamps, it makes that job a little bit easier, sort of lining up and everything. See, again, it's a little bit off, but I think when you look at it, I think you do get a 3D impression. I don't know whether you can see that. To me, it's a little bit too far over. See, it's, if I lift that, can't really see it properly, but I think it's just a little bit too far over, so that it looks a bit more sort of as if you've had too many drinks. But you get the idea. It's just a way of giving the sentiment just a little bit of a lift, that's all really. So next thing I'm going to do is add my flower. Now, as I said, I wasn't going to stencil it and whatever today, because I've done it all 2 or 3 times now. Don't get me wrong, if you want me to go through any of the stencils, I will, with pleasure, not a problem. But I just thought I wanted to concentrate on this bit today, just so that you could see, you know, how easy it is really. Now then, I'm just going to cut these in half, because I don't want a full piece on here, because obviously this flower is only diddy and the leaves aren't very long. But in fact, that's still 2. I shall cut it the other way and make it a thin strip. Along there, like that, and then just a little piece on here. Okay, so that's really all you need. And I just wanted to lift it away from the card, because I just think if you add it flat, I just think it loses something. I think if you lift it off the card a little bit, then I just think it gives an extra dimension and a little bit more interest to the card. Thank you, Sam. I enjoy doing them, so win-win, hey? If ever there is anything that anybody wants to see, is struggling with, wants help with, then just drop me a message and ask me if I can do it in a live. It's not a problem. I can sort of do things to suit if that's what you want. So just let me know, okay? So pop my flower down here, just making sure that I miss that sentiment. Now, to me, I think this card would be ideal to make in sort of in batch numbers, if you like, with a simple flower and a simple sentiment. If you were making sort of in sympathy cards, Thursday's card, all being well, will be based along those lines. And again, it will be a good card to batch make as well. So you know, you should get some ideas for quick cards, hopefully. Now, to finish off, me being me in true Dawn style, I'm going to finish off with a bit of sparkle. Right, I'm adding 3 little gems up the top here, and I'm going with a purple, if my glue will come out of my bottle, because I don't want much. So I'm trying to be really careful not to put too much, because I don't want it to, and you don't need much. That's the thing with this glue, you really don't need an awful lot. So I'm just being extra careful. I'm just putting 1 over here just to give it a little bit of balance. I use my fabulous pickup tool, which I know some of you have been desperate to get but have had to wait. It's well worth the wait, trust me. I love mine, and I like the pokey end as well, because it's brilliant for getting all your bits out of your die cuts. Okay, and then I've chosen a smaller one to put over here, just for a little bit of interest, not for any other reason, just because I like using gems. So I mean, that's it really. That is the quickest, most simple card I think I've done. And this effect here with the score lines, I think is brilliant. Why I've never spotted that before, I don't know, but I think that's a lovely touch. And of course you could do it and stop halfway, so you could come down with one score line and then come a little bit less with the next one, a little bit less with the next one, so that you're just making something a little bit more interesting on your card, just to make it look a little bit different to the norm. I just think that's a really clever idea. So there's your card. That's today's card. So I'm going to love you and leave you there. Thanks very much for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you enjoyed that. So I'll see you on Thursday. Fingers crossed. Bye for now.